This being recorded, colleagues, kindly note this. So we will have 4 sessions. We'll start from um, a keynote address by Dr. Devinder Sharma, who's a authoritative voice. He has have his detailed introduction later. But for me, he is an authoritative voice for the farmers in India, who has been constantly speaking about the farmers' interest. Diaspora, he is also very I will call him a friend. I will call him an elder brother. He has been guiding me all these years. And thanks, Ravinder, you are here. And you also had an appointment with the Supreme Court committee. So good that you still could manage to participate here and share your views here. Then we have community voices, four community voices from different parts of the Asia region. Then we'll hear members of parliament and representatives from the United Nations, ESCAP. Then also we'll, in third session, we'll hear the voices of individual society leaders. Finally, we'll have a session, short rather, where like last year, we will have a declaration at the end. We have a draft declaration which will be shared. Your inputs will be taken, and that will be finalized and eventually shared with politicians, UN systems, and all. We have 22 co-organizers in this. GCAP coordinates this process for all members equally take the ownership of this ADRFG code, APST, ADN, ADAPV, Asia, from Asia, SAPE, Action Aid Intensive, Asia Region, ADA Action International, WNTA, NFN, PRRN, NRDS, SINFO, SDO, PDA, One Singapore, Africa, Japan Forum, CCC, and AFCAS. With this, I would like to hand it over to Bina Palikal, the chairperson of Asia Dalit Rights Forum. Bina is also a member of Executive Committee of CCAP to moderate the first session. Bina, over to you.
Thank you so much, Pradeep, and welcome to all of you. Jai Bhim, Johar, and Salam to everyone. Thank you so much for giving time and attending this very important event. While we're all very busy looking at the SDGs and how the Sustainable Development Goals will be implemented, the agenda set 2030, we know that a lot of the implementation depends on this region because, we have the highest poverty levels. We have, many of the countries are very low on the hunger index. Just to say what are those countries in our, just some examples I'll give. Indonesia is ranked 77 out of 125 countries. Timor-Leste has the highest hunger index in Southeast Asia. Philippines is number 66. In the South Asia region, Bangladesh is 81, Nepal is 69, Sri Lanka is 60, Pakistan is 102, and India is lower than any of these countries, which is about 111. So if you look at the larger picture and the broader picture, we know that if, like I think Pradeep also mentioned, that to be able to achieve the SDGs, we have to ensure that countries in Asia take very serious, look at the serious concerns. And one of them is, every night there are a large population of people dying or going to sleep without food or without nutritious food, and thereby a lot of other conditions, like, conditions of poverty. We also look at the intersectionalities of that different communities have been for centuries been discriminated, and therefore, we can look at the Dalit community, the indigenous community, women and children within these communities who are further marginalized because of both systemic change and the systematic discrimination and access that is limited because of several barriers that are put in place, both by society as well as by the system itself. To be able to ensure that every person in this part of the world does not go to sleep hungry, to ensure that we have nutritious food, to ensure that, we have food. And as a result of this, that we have, better right to health, there are several other systems that need to be rejigged, that we need to relook at how we are ensuring that, for example, we should have adequate budget allocations to ensure that people have access to health, are able to go to public hospitals. We have to have a public health system that works for all, that is non-discriminatory, that is easier to access for people from the communities. I can go on talking about the situation here, but I'm not here to talk. We are here to listen to other very important voices, and also hear the community. So our first speaker is our keynote speaker, who is, I will just introduce him, Dr. Devendra Sharma, who is a food and trade policy analyst on the Great Indian Divide, Opulence and Starvation. He is a distinguished food and trade policy analyst. He was with the Indian Express, amongst the largest selling English newspaper in India. His expertise covers sustainable agriculture, biodiversity and intellectual property rights, environment and development, food security, hunger and poverty, and the implications of the free trade paradigm for developing countries. He has been recently awarded the honorary degree of Professor at Large by the CSK Himachal Pradesh Agricultural University. He has formerly been a visiting fellow to the International Rice Research Institute in the Philippines, the School of Development Studies at the University of East Anglia, UK, and University of Cambridge. And the most popular Indian magazine, The Week, has listed Sharma in 2009 among the 25 most valuable Indians, calling him Green Chomsky. So, with I think that we are all looking forward to listen to you, Dr. Sharma. The time is yours. Please take it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Beena. I think it's a great pleasure for me to join this August gathering. And of course, People's Assembly is very crucial for any country to bring up the people's voices, the neglected people's voices, I would call. And one of the best ways to see or look at the inequality that prevails in the world is to see from the prism of food. And I think food security, as you rightly mentioned in the beginning, and you have given us the ranking that we see globally as far as global hunger index is concerned. And very shamefully, India is at the bottom of the neighboring countries as far as the ranking is concerned. And it happens in a country which is overladen with food, and which is also showing signs of opulence. And when I say signs of opulence, it is vulgar opulence that we see on the one extreme, and the kind of starvation we see on the other side. To just give an example, there is a never-ending marriage taking place in India. One of the tycoons of India's, one of the families has the son getting married, and the for the last 6 months we have been only getting news of the kind of extravaganza that is taking place, and also now it extends to London. And there, the post-marriage activities have begun in that part of the world, and I hope they end by September. But nevertheless, the country has spent, or the tycoon or the business house has spent about 50,000 rupees so far on that ostentatious marriage. And on the other hand, you talked about the kind of starvation that exists in India. Lately, we have a study coming up from the United Nations, the state of food security and nutrition, and it tells us very clearly and very starkly that roughly about 55.6% of India cannot afford a healthy diet. Which means about 790 million people, when they sleep, have not been able to take the balanced diet. And that tells you the inequality that prevails in India. On the one hand, we have the opulence, we have the number of billionaires who are joining the high net worth club, increasing, multiplying every year. And on the other hand, we have millions of people who are on the marginal, extremes. The point, I think, which is very crucial is that in a country which has abundant food stocks, in fact, many studies had said that if we were the kind of surplus that India produces, if we were to stack one bag of grain over another bag of grain over another bag of grain, and we were to stack our food in that situation or condition, we could actually walk up to the moon and come back. Now, that's the kind of food we have in the country, and yet we have, as I said earlier, roughly about 790 million people not being able to afford a balanced diet. The number of undernourished people in this country, of course, is also the highest in the world, and we have roughly about 200 million people. I would say a little less than, to be exact, 196 million people who sleep hungry every night. Now, this is happening in a country where, as I said, we produce enough surplus, but also it is very important to understand that the majority of those who sleep hungry are the farmers themselves. The average income of a farmer in India is at the bottom of the pyramid. And in a country where we have roughly about 50% population dependent on agriculture, and which means roughly about 700 million people who are directly indirectly involved with agriculture. And if they have an income level which is pathetically very low, I think it tells us very clearly why we have that incapacity or incapability to assure food for each household in a manner that we would all like to see. Now, this inequality is, of course, the outcome of the bigger inequality that the world must understand. And several years back, there was a very interesting study, which I think each one of us must remember, that one of the institutes, Brookings Institutes, had said that all that the world needs to remove poverty is $100 billion. And $100 billion, of course, the world doesn't have that kind of money. But when we have to produce surplus money, or what we call as quantitative easing in economic terms, then we have all the money. And we have seen in the last 25, 26 years or so, the world has produced about $30 trillion of surplus money. And this is coming from the central banks in the big major economies and so on. And yet we find when we have to really allocate money for removing poverty, everyone has a resource constraint. Now that tells us that you have money for the rich, but we don't have money for the poor. That's one reason why inequality is growing in a manner that the world is now finding it difficult to address. Every time the World Economic Forum meeting takes place, the Oxfam has been telling us and very clearly warning us that the kind of inequality that prevails, only a section of it or a proportion of it is good enough to remove poverty from the face of this planet. But I think if the priorities were to shift to eradicating poverty, much of the world would have been a much better place to live in by now. But nevertheless, the kind of economic design that we have all taken over in the last few decades, the result is that the inequality has been widening or worsening at a level that I think or the major economies are unable to now find a way out to really address that particular issue. Although we have the figures being splashed now and then, but I don't think a serious effort has been made anywhere in the world to see how to bridge that inequality that prevails. I think one of the ways to prevail or to reduce these kinds of inequalities is when the people's voices are taken up in a manner that they become part of the mainstream. I think this is where the Asia's regional assembly, people's assembly that we have for the next couple of days is going to be very crucial in finding or in suggesting what could be the way out to get out of this inequality trap that the world is now faced with. Of course, food is one way to look at it, then poverty, then there are other areas that we are all going to grapple for the next couple of days, at least till the time the assembly takes place. And we will try to see that how the gap has been widening over the decades, despite loud voices coming up that we need to really address these issues first. Having known this kind of a paradigm that exists today, I think the bigger picture before us is how to tame or how to ensure that the economic design is recast, or there is a rethinking on the way the economic design has been laid out, so that we reduce the dependence on, or we reduce or we get away with the obsession that we have on the growth parameters like GDP. I think it is very important for the civil society to understand that GDP, the way it is designed, is basically to measure or to see how more sport can flow for the richy rich. Now that is exactly what has expanded or extended the inequality map that we have before us. I think unless we get away from this obsession that we have with GDP as a metrics of development, we would never be able to to aspire or to look at a world where people have the kinds of needs and their utilities or their requirements are taken care of adequately. We have the resources in this world, but we actually are not putting in resources where they are required. I think People's Assembly has been raising these issues, and I'm sure at one stage it will get prominence in the kind of economic model that are being restructured now, because globally there is a rethinking happening, that the neoliberal economic design, or the design which laid emphasis on the income of a few people or a handful of people going up steadily, is now at least designed in a manner that the benefits shifts not only to the so-called beneficiaries but to the entire mass, and the planet also gains out of it. We are also in a very interesting cusp. While we try to colonize the moon, and while we try to find now a foothold onto Mars, and we perhaps believe that this planet is not going to be worth living in a couple of years from now. So we have the kind of economic design that we talk about has led us to that position, that we are now even thinking of setting up a kind of a doomsday vault on the moon, so that when the earth gets devastated, or the planet is in a state where it is not useful anymore to look at the kind of decent living that we are all looking towards. I think they are now trying to venture out onto the outer space to see that we have new places to put our foot down, or to build our palaces, or to build our houses. But the point I'm trying to make is, if this is the kind of shift that is taking place in that economic thinking, that the world is now on one side grappling with it, on the other side we are still trying to ascertain that it strengthens further, so that that kind of a wedge that exists between the super rich and the poor is further widened. So this is a very interesting phase. When I say interesting, in the sense that, are we on the right track, where each one of us gets to have a kind of a living that we all aspire to, or we are getting into the hands where our destiny would be controlled by a handful of people or handful of conglomerates. We know that in the case of agriculture, and when we talk of food security, we are moving from green revolution to what is called as agriculture revolution 4.0. Agriculture revolution 4.0, where most of the countries are very exciting, very showing up exciting possibilities. When we are trying to look at the role digitalization will play, precision farming or precision fermentation would play, when we are looking into what the satellites imagery, and of course drones, and so on, we are slowly and gradually passing on the control over food into the hands of a handful of conglomerates, which means the number of billionaires, food billionaires, is going to rise, as some of the studies have already shown. And in the days to come, I think what we eat and how we eat, or where do we grow, all these things will be determined by a new kind of a food clergy that is going to emerge in the years to come. So here we are, while we are all trying to work out that we have food security being taken care of by domestically producing food enough for us. On the other hand, we now have artificial or synthetic food becoming a big industry in the years to come, and it's already heading towards that. The world's first food factory, which does not need land, which does not need farmers, has been set up in Finland. The factory has already started producing food, and that's not the only factory which claims that it doesn't need farmers, it doesn't need land, because all it needs is to draw out some elements or minerals from the air, mix it up with the bacteria, cross with the bacteria, and they're going to produce food for us. Then, of course, we have seen in Europe a huge industry building on insect rearing. Insect is going to be the way forward to extract protein. From food security, we now go on to protein security, which means the insect rearing that is taking place across the world, and we are also we are also seeing a kind of assault on the farmers in Europe. They are being pushed out of cultivation. The feeling is that we don't need farmers now. In America, we of course have a commercial approval for a synthetic chicken. In India, we are heading towards a approval for a synthetic egg. And I think that tells us very clearly that we are moving towards a world where food will be produced, synthetic food will be on our tables. And I'm sure one of the celebrities coming and telling how wonderful this food is, and much of the food habits will then start shifting. But nevertheless, the point I'm trying to make is, if agriculture revolution, if industrial revolution 4.0 is something that we all look up to, or there's a lot of talk about it, we also need to start talking about agriculture revolution 4.0. Is that the kind of a revolution the world needs to move on to? Or yes, of course, there is nothing wrong with technology, but I think we have to use technology in a manner that it doesn't ensure that the farmers get away from farming. And that's a kind of a issue which is not only going to affect a country like India, where we have, as I said earlier, 50% of the population dependent on agriculture, but it's also going to impact countries all across the world. And I think that should tell us, if that is the kind of a kind of a model that we would like to move on. The choice before that ultimately takes place is going to be on us. If we take a call, if we say no, that's not the kind of food we need. We need the kind of food that farmers produce. We need not only, we don't need synthetically produced food. What we need is food prepared in agroecological and sustainable farming systems that the world needs today, which would reduce the impact of climate change also, and try to see that we do not do any more damage to the planet, I think is the way forward. So, so it is time that we try to grapple or come to grips with the kind of realities that are showing a kind of a shifting sand. That is normally the term that is used for. And I think if that is the kind of a shifting sand the world is moving towards, we have to be very, very watchful and careful. I think in the end, all I can say is that do not be shocked, do not be worried about it, that it is going beyond our control. Because I remember one of these African sayings, that if you think that your voice, you're going to be alone and your voice doesn't matter because you are only one person, I think what is important is to understand that if you were to spend a night with just one mosquito in your room when you sleep, that mosquito, when you wake up in the morning, he has already created a hell for you. I think we are all better than at least one mosquito. And I think we can all raise our voices in a manner that the world will begin to listen to us. And I think the hope for a kind of a planet where everyone is assured of a decent living, and we are born with that kind of a hope and aspiration, is something that can be realized, provided each one of us builds up that kind of a narrative that the world requires. So I think with this hope that the General Assembly will throw up a kind of a voice, a collective voice from the communities, from the policymakers, and so on, and that will tell us what kind of a world we need. I think let's not allow them to get away with it or design a world for us. What we need is to design a world for ourselves, and I think that's a design that we need to build up. I think Global Assembly is an excellent place and a collective and an opportunity which can try to raise that kind of a voice, and I think that narrative change is what the world requires. So with all this hoping that the General Assembly will end up giving us a strong message which will resonate all through the world, and I think that's the world that we can look up to. So there is a new world that we can create. Yes, it is in our hands. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharma. Really inspiring words, and I hope you'll be with us for a little bit more time. I'll just open the floor for some questions. But he's challenging us to be more than just a mosquito. And I think that's a challenge that we have to take up. Definitely redesigning. I think that is the key word here, that how do we redesign to ensure that people have food security, access to health, and several other things. And I think one of the key discussions that are now globally happening is the how do we look at a country not just through GDP figures, but have other ways and means of looking at it. That's a discussion for another time, but he did touch upon it, and we have to make it also affordable and accessible as well to various communities. So if you can just stay with us for another 5 to 7 minutes, I'd like to open the floor if there are any questions, and I'm not able to see the rest of the participants, but if anybody sees that anybody has kept questions, please let me know and then I can call out, or just unmute yourself and you can start speaking. Okay, there's a lot of comments about your presentation and how great it was. But anybody has got any questions? He has to go for a very important meeting. So, okay. Since there's no question, I would like to, I'm sorry, is somebody saying something?
No, go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead. I was thinking
Adi,
otherwise we
you
can
had
go
a
to the
question?
no. Otherwise, I was thinking we can go to the community voice. But you have a
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, just one question. I know that you mentioned in your presentation that in countries like India, there is more supply, right? There's a lot of, there is a lot of food grains that are going to waste. There's a lot of food that is going to waste. What do you think could be a strategy to ensure? Is it a problem with distribution? Is it a problem with lack of political will? Because if there is enough food and we have enough food, like you said, we can go to the moon and come back. If we have that much of food, why is there such a huge gap that actually people are dying today because of malnutrition? People are dying because there have been hunger deaths reported in the last few years. I mean, we are thinking of technology that can take us to other planets, but we're not able to feed our own population. What would you think quickly, probably in in half a minute or to a minute?
Well, I think it's a very important question. I remember some years back, Amartya Sen had said that famines have disappeared from those countries where autocratic rule used to exist, the dictatorships and so on. But when we look at the countries which are democratic, we find hunger prevailing and persisting. I think it shows very clearly that it's a lack of political will that is keeping a sizable percentage of the population hungry. And as I said earlier, when we have enough stocks, food stocks, I don't see any reason why people should be still living in hunger or not being able to afford a balanced diet, or be in a conditions which are depicting undernourishment. So that's one reason why we have this crisis. I only hope that the kind of impetus that the governments try to push in on the economic growth model or design, if they were to see how hunger can be managed, in a time frame, given time frame, then they allocate that. I think it is completely and easily possible to remove hunger at the international level and at the national level too. As I gave you the figure, internationally there is no dearth of money. They have all the money for quantitative easing, but when it comes to eradicating hunger and poverty, there no country is willing to pump in money or to spare that kind of a money. Nationally, yes, I think we have money for everything else, but for providing hope or in a way of hunger, removing hunger for the poor. So I think that's because it's a question of priorities. And I think the moment or the time when we take on this as a topmost priority, or as an indicator that if you remove hunger, that's the kind of economic growth any country should have, is should become the first yardstick for measuring growth. I think then we will see a kind of a shift taking place.
Yeah, there are just two more questions. If you have time, you can answer, or we could also take it. How do we reconcile being a mosquito and the power of the markets? And what should be the framing of people's voices in terms of creating an alternative framework? Are you able to stay for a
Yeah,
minute and yeah.
I think I recall this when I was some years back speaking in Africa. A lady got up and said that, "Sir, I understand what you say, but the problem is I am just a lone voice. Even if I want to do something, how will it make an impact?" And I thought it was a very loaded question. Before another lady got up and said, "Sir, I want to answer this." And in her answer, she said that there is an African saying that says, if you think that you are alone and you cannot make a difference, or your voice will not make a difference, try to sleep with a mosquito at night, one mosquito in your room, and you will see what will happen to you. If one mosquito can do it, I think we are no less than mosquito, at least. I thought that was a very powerful message. And often I use that because many times I find people are dejected and they lose hope that, they are the lone voice, so it's not going to make an impact. But I guess, 1 + 1 becomes 11. So I think it is important to build up those voices. What kind of a model that we have? I think the climate change negotiations and the kind of a boiling that the world is now witnessing, climate boiling that the world is witnessing, has clearly made us very, let's say, brought it into our thinking that the kind of intensive agriculture that the world has relied on hasn't worked. If 34% of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from agriculture, it tells us that agriculture is a big player when we look at the climate going in aberration. So I think what we need at this juncture is to move on to that kind of a model of agriculture, which is or dependent on food sovereignty, which is also linking up agroecology as the way forward. In Andhra Pradesh, we have a model of agriculture, community managed natural farming, which I'm not sure how many of us know, is perhaps the world's biggest agroecological model that has been laid out, and it's done by the government itself, and already 800,000 farmers have shifted from chemical farming to non-chemical farming. The state of Andhra Pradesh, which is in South India, has plans to convert the entire population in agriculture, which is 60 lakh, which means 6 million. They will be converting into from chemical to non-chemical by the year 2031. I think that's the kind of a model that the world needs to move forward to, agroecologically using that model, and then of course trying to ensure that for a country where small farmers are now dominating, including in India and everywhere in the developing countries, I think what we need is to go in for food sovereignty as the way forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma. I know that it's a very, very busy time, but you have taken time and been here and answered all the questions. Thank you very much, and all the best for your meetings. We
Thank you
will
very
now
much.
move on. We will now move on to the community voices. I'm sure that many of us are waiting to hear the community voices. We have 3 community voices who will bring in the community perspective. We have Amin Khatun, who's an agricultural worker from Pakistan, and will speak on exclusion from social protection. These are 3 video messages. Then we have community voice 2, who's Raj Kishore Panit and Lakshmi Bayalkoti Sarki, who are Dalit voices from Nepal on access to health insurance. And then we have Lillian, who's a human rights defender from Myanmar on human rights issue. She's a writer and advocate for human and women's rights. Then we have Nafisa Jannat from Bangladesh on Bangladesh Students Movement. And she's a coordinator of anti-discrimination student movement in Bangladesh. So are they all video messages, Pradeep?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you can just start.
No, 2 video messages and 2 direct messages. So I can run the first one.
Please.
Okay.
इसमें गोठ संजो जिलो सखा असा हड़पो करण वाले और ऐसा कमकार केंदा आयो असा के बरसात पईजी भैया जब बोर्ड अची वे जमीन बुडी भैया आने सब हुकूमत ऑन करे यानी जो यूरिया सतींदा आयो जा गा केंदो मलेरिया मच्छरा वो जाति तक पाइंदो इंसान बीमार मलेरिया थी पयो वा दिसो त सने गोठ में अस्पताल भी ना है दुखा सुखा रात भी थी वेंदे या बार हली जो आहे चोर फुर लगी पई आहे अवेल सवेल थी वेंदे त असां मजा न निकरी सघंदा सने गोठ में स्कूल खपे ॿियो नंबर त असांजा नंढा नंढा ॿार आहिनि स्कूल अस्पतालूं आहिनि तव्हांजे वटि न उहो समझ न असां वटि अस्पताल खपे असांजे पंहिंजे ॻोठ में जॾहिं कमकार करे को लाई चङी अची वञे जॾहिं तो ज़मीन जो कमु थिए त पोइ वञूं न जो पोइ ॻोठ में थींदी त पोइ कोई हरते वारो आहे जेको घर आहे त पंहिंजो दवा जे लाइ बि वठी सघो था हाणे 2 क़दम असां हलिया वेंदा आहियूं जो कम बि सिड़िजी वेंदो आहे ॿियो नंबर त असांजे ॻोठ में स्कूल बि न आया था ॿार असांजा वीचारा सभु घर आबाद आहिनि इहा असांजी गुज़ारिश आहे त हाणे कहिड़ो मुतालबो कयो था हुकूमत पाकिस्तान खां हुकूमत तालुक इहो कयूं था त असांजो फसल ॿुॾी वञनि त असां सां मदद कनि ऐं जेको असां कमकार कंदो हारी औरतुनि जे लाइ असांखे कार्ड खपे लाई सगाई जो असांजो इलाज जो मदद कयो ठीकु आहे
So I have one
Pradeep, the
more.
video there's a problem. The video is not moving. I don't know whether it's an
We are
problem.
just in front of the UN building. You could say in front or behind. I would want to believe that we are in front of the UN building. We are at the Global People's Assembly.
You could not hear you could not see the video.
We
Veena?
could hear and we could see, but just the first part, like it was not moving. We could hear.
Give me,
Yeah.
give me a minute. It's a short video. You can replay. Give me a minute.
Should we ask the other speakers to speak and then come back to the video?
Yeah. Let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Then just give me a second. Yes.
The third, you can take Myanmar,
Yes.
colleague from Myanmar and Bangladesh, and then we can come back to the video.
So, Lillian, who is a human rights defender from
इसमें गोठ संजो जिलो सखा ऐसा हड़पो करने वाले होते हो ऐसा काम कार
yourself, Pradeep.
ऐसा के पजी भैया जब बहुत अच्छी है जमीन बुद्धि भैया.
Thank you. Lillian?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. That organization. And I'd like to introduce myself first. I'm a Lillian, or founder of the Portals for Homeland Myanmar, and also a feminist writer. And I'm so honored to speak before you in here. I would like to share our people connection and strong belief on the federal democracy values. Firstly, I would like to share our Burmese condition. Myanmar is now struggling for 70 years revolution still now, right? So Myanmar is struggling for more than 15 years for freedom, equality, and peaceful society. We all can see clearly our hope and commitment for democracy. I'm so proud to be one of them who are carrying democracy movement against all forms of the authoritarian until now. At the same time, Myanmar is one of the poorest country and with a rich resource and crime prone and also a high drug issue. So our people, you can see our people very sincere and very humble and very content. Now they are passing their life with a hunger, insecure, and undignified life that we all can even imagine in that life. Spring Revolution is now, you all see, right, more than 3 years. A hunter still oppress our people with a brutal way and kill like an humanized way, as like a psychological warfare to affect that hunter. Mental trauma and hunger is now like a pandemic in Myanmar, and we now afraid the hunter more than the COVID-19, and more than the hunger and more than the mental trauma. We all are human just because we can sympathize and empathize other people and pleasure. I think you all in here can empathize and sympathize and can feel that pain and hunger also. So as you know, we also know that there is as Mr. also present about the hunger, like the world have a lot of problem. After COVID-19 pandemic happened, our daily life is almost changed. In that condition, Myanmar became the most terrifying condition after the coup. The coup dragged our hope and drink to the hill. Even 1/3 of our people inside Myanmar cannot stay at home and flee to the borderline areas or to your country, right? So also 2 in 5 people are now hunger. There is a big and huge people in Myanmar is hunger. International aid or like other community aid is not enough, still enough, and cannot cover our people hunger. We all know that the revolution is brought hot ahead. We value democratic values more than our lives, our home, and our food. We know that to transform political culture is very difficult. Empowering and supporting community is very fundamental, strategic, and practical. That's why we all are here gathering and sharing and listening community voice or other people's voice and find the best possible way to do right now. Right? We all are change agent. You also change agent, me also change agent to change the world more healthier, more worthy and free from the oppressed, and also not need to neglect other trouble. We can success and resist the authoritarian not only by our people force, we also need your neighbor country aid and global aid also to end the dictatorship in our country, our community, and our home. It's not just our accountability, also all people around the world's duty and responsibility. I do believe that we all values being human being. Human is the precious ability to cooperate each other to success all problems. We all need to grab each other's hand to fight for hunger, inequality, oppress, discrimination, abuse all over the world, right? Not only our country. We all need to show our kindness by filling each other's gap and needs. Now we need a lot. Also, you have a lot of need. We need to share and we need to solve that problem. Not just focus our problem. We all need to focus all problem, right? We need to actionable support, not just the word. We don't need words. We just action and help, real help. We can start rebuild our country and our society from the community level stay now. And as you know, our country is with no rule of law, no justice. That's why we need to focus the community level. Making community change is the biggest change, I think. And I would like to give some suggestion, and I would like to give some advice or ask your advice also. Please support our community lead initiative or advocacy for the diplomatic recognition of the democratic forces. And also provide a safe haven, like for the refugee, like in your place. Please give some places for that refugee, and also humanitarian aid. And I would like to remind that we need to find starting point that action we all can do right now. That is a very important thing. I would like to say also thank you so much that all Asian countries accept our refugee and treat kindly our people in your places. I appreciate so much. I know that is a big burden for your country. Though we want to stay in our home, though we cannot stay in our home, so we flee your country. That's why thank you so much. And finally, I would like to say that the fight for federal democracy is not easy way, and that is not our habit. Just we need just freedom, fairness, and justice, and that affect your country also, I think. And so please stand with our country and long, day by day, or maybe long time. That is not one day struggle. That is not one day fighting play. There is a long-term struggle, and so we need alliance and solidarity of you all. And this fight is not just about Myanmar, also resisting tyranny everywhere, and together we can overcome insecurity, hunger, and also like discrimination, stigmatized. Now our country became a stigmatized country in the global society. That's why finally I would like to say thank you so much for inviting me and also give that chances to share our voice. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Lillian. I think very important points raised. We all have to be change agents. She's also saying that we have to say no to war. I'm sure that in a conflict region, because of the conditions that persist, it almost exasperates the situation of access to food security, access to food, access to health, etc. And she's also calling on us and challenging us that how do we support the people who cannot live in their own countries, but would like to, get refugee status in some of our countries. So thanks very much, Lillian. Pradeep, are we ready with the video or should I go to the next speaker?
Let's complete the speaker first.
Okay. All right. So I would request Nafisa Jannat from Bangladesh from the Bangladesh Students Movement. She is a coordinator for anti-discrimination student movement in Bangladesh. As we have all seen what is happening there, it'll be really great to hear you. So over to you. I can't see, so
Always it's
she's
Hello, I
there.
am
Yeah,
audible.
Nafisa, can you hear?
Yeah, I think she's
Yes, yes.
she's here. Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you all. So first of all, I want to say that greetings to you all, and I was waiting for this time and to have this conversation with you all. So first, what I can say that wind of change is blowing in our country. Back before 1 month, we couldn't think that the political and social situation of Bangladesh would come to this situation. The students started a very peaceful quota reformation movement, and then we had to do our movement against the and the racist government, and within 1 month the total scenario of Bangladesh has changed. So in the first place, when we started our movement, the vanguard of our movement was the students and the people who also the students who wanted to enter to their job sector. So in our country, the person or the students who wants to join in the job sectors, they don't have enough facilities, or they don't have enough circulation. They cannot have the opportunity in equal position. In our country, we have quotas, and there is discrimination between the discrimination in a sense that we have a larger percentage of quota. So the people who don't have quota, or the students don't have quota, they lag behind in the race of job opportunities. So in July, we started our movement, and what we found that the government was very attacking to us, that they don't want they were not interested to have conversation with us to solve our problem, but they were very intended to have they wanted to attack us, that okay, we don't have any conversation with you, but we are telling you to stop this movement, and now we will attack you. So I was one of the coordinator in this movement, and what I saw through this movement was horrific, and I was in front of death. And many students like me were in this position. And in our country, more than 800 people died in this movement, and more than 18,000 people, students, children, were attacked and they were injured. So if I summarize our movement, the movement started in a peaceful condition. We have one requirement, that we need quota reformation, and we had to
go for 9 principle in our movement, and then it turned into one principle that we want that our fascist Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, we want her position down. So in our country, the movement was so massive, and she was bound, and she had to flee our country. So this is how from the July 1st to 5th August, our movement, we did continue our movement, and this is how our in our country the movement end up in an anti-fascist movement. And it is not historical only in our in the history of our country. I would say that the uprising was is historical also in the world history. Okay, so this is very significant. And my respected Awal Bhai, when told me about this program, he wanted me to say about the aspiration of this movement. So I would say that this, in our country, this time is full of possibilities. That in our country, the regime was very autocratic. Okay, so now in our country, the young generation was the vanguard of this movement, and they want change. They don't want the repetition of autocratic regime. So everyone is becoming, or in many countries of the world, people used to say that young generation is not that much conscious about the political thoughts or the change of their country, or how they can contribute in their in the change of their country's system. So in our country, that's not the case. So I would say that the positive or optimistic side in our countries right now is that students are very conscious, and we say that this generation is Gen Z generation. So this generation is very cautious what to do and what not to do, and they are very willing to contribute in the systematic change of our country. So we are saying that we need to focus, or we need to prioritize in the basic needs of our people. So we are talking about education, our health system. So all this sector, or including education, health system, and all the systems in our country has been corrupted. But I think we are being the agent of change, and we are trying from our side, and our interim government also very willing to cooperate with students, and they are promising us that they're trying to make better our country. And the very important is priority in our country is right now to re-establish the law and order system, and we our interim government is working on it. And I would say that they know the spirit of the mass uprising in our country, and with the mandate of 90% people in our country, they came into our they started to talk about sorry, I want, my network is having issues. So I wanted to say that in our country, our interim government has that understanding that what people needs now. So we are going through in our country, Bangladeshi people are going through a historical timeline. So students have made a history, and we are wishing for change, and people have that desire to change all the autocratic elements in our country. So and I would say that this is not only concern of Bangladesh, it is the also the concern of the globe. So all you people hearing me, I think you people were aware of this condition in our country. So I would say that we need help, and in
We need to wrap
Bangladesh,
up. Nasifa,
sorry.
we need to wrap. We need to wrap up
Yeah.
because we're running out of time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I would say that in our globe, we all are connected, and I had this opportunity to speak in front of you. So I would say in our journey of change, people from different countries will be conscious, or they will observe the condition of Bangladesh and how they can participate, or how they can contribute in the change of our country, or they can advise us. I would like to say that you people, or you can contribute, or you can follow up our condition, and we
Absolutely.
can make a this is a global platform, but in
Nasifa, we need to move on.
yes,
Nasifa, sorry, I need to
yes.
cut you off because we need to move on.
Yeah.
Okay,
So please
so
just say final
so
second.
I have that in the end, I would say that I am I would say everyone that they can help us in any form from different countries in this globe, and we need this help in this time. So, and I would say that thank you for inviting me in this platform, and we will talk or meet again in another platform. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nasifa. And sorry, we have time constraints, but we'd like to listen more about what has happened in Bangladesh. Congratulations to the youth there and for the uprising. All strength to you and power to build a new system, to rebuild the country into what we really want and what the people want. All strength. And we hope that, listening to you is also, we will take away is hope that, there is hope. And she mentioned Gen Z, and I'm sure the future is yours. Take it away from us and, build the world, build a better place. I'm sure that you'll be able to do. Thank you so much. Pradeep, are we going to the videos?
Yes.
Please.
Next will be, voice from Pakistan on social protection. So let me know if it's running.
इसमें गोठ जो जिलो सखा असा हड़पो करण वाले और तो
You can see the screen also.
असा के बरसात पजी भैया जब बोर्ड अच्छी
I mean,
No, I think it's
only
okay.
It's okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
यानी जो यूरिया सतींदा आयूं जा गा थींदो मलेरियो मच्छर वो जाति तक पाइंदो इंसान बीमार मलेरियो थी पियो आ ॾिसो त असांजे ॻोठ में अस्पताल बि न आहे दुखा सुखा रात भी थी वेंदे आ ॿार हली जो आहे चोर फुर लगी पई आहे अवेल सवेल थी वञे त असां न निकिरी सघंदा आहियूं असांजे ॻोठ में स्कूल खपे ॿियो नंबर त असांजा नंढा नंढा ॿार आहिनि स्कूल अस्पताल आहिनि तव्हांजे वटि न उहो समझ न असां वटि अस्पताल खपे असांजे पंहिंजे ॻोठ में जॾहिं कमकार करे को लाई चङी अची वञे जॾहिं तो ज़मीन जो कमु थिए त पोइ वञूं न जो पोइ ॻोठ में थींदी त पोइ कोई हरते वारो आहे जो को घर आहे त पंहिंजो दवा जे लाइ बि वठी सघो था हाणे ॿ क़दम असां हलिया वेंदा आहियूं जो कम बि सिड़िजी वेंदो आहे ॿियो नंबर त असांजे ॻोठ में स्कूल बि न आया था ॿार असांजा वीचारा सभु घर बात आहिनि इहा असांजी गुज़ारिश आहे हाणे कहिड़ो मुतालबो कयो था पाकिस्तान खां हुकूमत तालुक इहो कयूं त तव्हां असांजो फसल ॿुॾी वञनि त असां सां मदद कनि ऐं जेको असां कमकार कयूं था हारी औरतुनि जे लाइ असांखे कार्ड खपे लाई सगाई जो असांजो इलाज जो मदद कयो ठीकु आहे
So, Mina, that's one more voice. Let me also share that.
Yeah, Nepal, right?
Two Dalit voices from Nepal.
Please, yes.
two of our
B hospital, largest hospital in Kathmandu city. नाम के हो? राजकिशोर पण्डित। के जाति भन्नुभयो रे? पण्डित कुमाल भित्रको जाति है। तपाईको स्थायी घर कहाँ हो रे? हाम्रो कलैयामा हो। अनि तपाई के को लागि यो वीर हस्पिटल आउनु भएको थियो? आमाको त्यो सञ्चालन भइरहेको नि त्यो मृत्यु भयो। तपाईलाई यहाँ आउनु भने कसले रिफर गर्यो? यो कलैयाबाट नाराईबाट। अनि तपाईको बिमाको लागि थियो कि थिएन? बिमाको स्वास्थ्य थियो कति तिर्नु भएको थियो? 3500। ल अनि तपाईले स्वास्थ्य बिमाको अन्तर्गत जे सुविधा तपाईले पाउनु पर्यो त्यो पाउनु भयो? के सुविधा पाउनु भयो सर? औषधि सबै फ्री भयो? के हो? ल कति वर्ष हुनुभयो? 53 साल भन्नुभयो है। 53 वर्ष हुनुभयो। 27 सालको। तपाईको स्थायी घर कहाँ भन्नुभयो? ए पिखेल भक्तपुर हो। तपाई यो वीर हस्पिटलमा किन आउनु भयो? अब यस्तो गाउँमा हस्पिटल छ हो त्यहाँ अलिकति उपचार हुन्छ सामदिनमा जस्तै कि अलि गाह्रो अपरेसनको लागि भनेर अनि तपाईले बिमा सम्बन्धी जानकारी छ तपाईलाई? अलि थाहा भयो। ए तपाईको आमाको स्वास्थ्य बिमा गराउनु भएको थियो? तपाईको आमा अहिले बिरामी पर्नु भयो हैन? स्वास्थ्य बिमा गराउनु भएको थियो। अहिले स्वास्थ्य बिमाको उहाँले पाउनु भएको छ, सुविधा पाउनु भएको छ त? सुविधाहरु मिलिरहेको छ। अनि उहाँले पाउने स्वास्थ्य उपचार अनि सबै पाउनु भएको छ? यहाँ भएको औषधिहरु छ। ए चाहिँ बाहिर किन्नु पर्ने भएको छ है। अनि उहाँलाई के समस्या रहेको रहेछ? समस्या भएको अब पहिलेदेखि नै उहाँको यो एक्सिडेन्ट भएर तपाईको यो स्वास्थ्य बिमासँग सम्बन्धित केही भन्ने गुनासोहरु केही छन्? जस्तो अब यसलाई अब धेरै नै खर्च बढी लागेदेखि छोटो मोटो निम्न वर्गको भएको हुनाले पर्याप्त छैन भन्नुभएको है। जति बिमाको सुविधा प्राप्त गर्नु भएको छ त्यसको चाहिँ अलिक पर्याप्त छैन हो?
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Pradeep. I think at this point this session we can close here, but just to say one final word from me before I hand it over to Pradeep, that it doesn't matter how many schemes are there. It doesn't matter, we've seen from these videos as well that there is a lot of food in the go downs. It doesn't matter about all this. It matters that we have to make this accessible, affordable, so that people can access it and remove the systems and barriers that people are not unable to access. So it's important not just to have the facilities, but also to ensure that it's accessible for people from the most discriminated communities. And our demand continues that a health insurance scheme or a social security scheme for everyone, and universally we ensure that people are able to access it. Thank you so much to all the speakers, community voices, and to GCAP for leading this discussion. Thanks so much. Over to you, Pradeep.
Thanks, Meena. Sorry you could not make the community voices full screen because we are facing technical problem. The videos were not shown. In the full screen, we could not see the video, so we just left it half screen. Yeah, thanks, Meena. I invite Manish Pradhan, the Asia coordinator of ActionAid International, to moderate the second session. Manish, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Pradeep. Namaste and good afternoon to everyone from Kathmandu. It's really good to be part of this forum, where ActionAid has been collaborating with GCAP and many others who are co-organizers of this forum. And thank you, Pradeep, for coordinating this part. really great to hear, starting from our keynote speaker, but also the community voices from different parts of Asia. This particular session is largely to respond to some of the issues that we heard from different community voices from the policymakers, both from different parts of the government, as well as from the UN bodies. Let me just start by introducing our speakers for this session. We have two speakers, and I hope both of them are already here. And if possible, would request to turn on their video if that is possible at all. So let me first introduce Dr. Rosnas Pandey, who is the Secretary of the Parliamentary Committee on Development, Economic Affairs and Good Governance in the National Assembly of Nepal. The major function of this parliamentary committee is to give necessary directives to the government bodies in relation to monitoring and evaluation of policy and programs related to sustainable development and good governance. Dr. Rosnas Pandey, can I request you, because I'm presenting, I cannot seem to see, to come on the video. Dr. Ununsa,
Avinash Ji here. I saw him entering the room. Abhishek?
I've seen his name in the list. Yeah.
Can someone please ensure that he's here?
No,
But maybe also.
Now I do not see him.
No, Pandey is not here. I don't see in the list.
He was there a while ago. I don't know if anyone has his contacts, and I request him to connect if he's disconnected. Yeah, maybe I can just introduce the second speaker.
And then we'll try to connect.
Yeah, sure. So the second speaker in this session is Hitomi Rankin, who holds an MSc in Environmental Management and from the University of Stirling. Having over 23 years of experience in the areas of environmental and sustainable development policies, she is currently serving as the Chief of Environment and Development Policy Section of the Environment and Development Division of UNESCAP. So can I please request Hitomi Rankin to turn on her video, if that is at all possible? Ms. Rankin, are you there? Okay, great.
Yes,
maybe we can start from you, and as we wait for Dr. Pandey, and you must have heard from our community voices from Pakistan, who's agricultural labor from Pakistan, who talked about our access to social security issues, from the Dalit representatives from Nepal, who also talked about access to public health, but not only health and different public services, but also interesting dimensions from Myanmar about the interconnections between issues of social justice and democracy. Sometimes we tend to see these two things differently, but then how the whole aspect of civil and political rights affects the implementation of social justice aspects, social economic rights, and vice versa, right? And most of the time, the most marginalized are the ones that are impacted the most. But also the power of young people, from what we heard from Nafiza, our young activists. So it was really great to have two young women human rights defenders speaking about the winds of change. And I really hope that that the aspirations of Bangladeshi young people will transform into a just society. We're still in a vacuum, and what we know from some experiences from other countries, certain times these vacuums are kind of hijacked by certain forces. We really hope that that doesn't happen. But just wanted to hear your reflections, Hitomi, maybe about in 5 minutes, about from your perspective, from where you sit, how these all connect and different voices you have heard, but then and what could be some next step solutions that you can offer from your lens. And we will also take few questions or comments. I would request if you have any comments, please do put them in the chat. Then I'll come to a second round, and then you can also respond to some other reflections that you hear from the participants. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you so much, Manish, and thanks very much to Pradeep and for all the colleagues from GCAP who I've had the privilege to interface with over the years. Very much appreciated. So Manish, very good summary of what we heard. I think I very much take away the point that you mentioned about the intersections of critical issues, which are now converging and together creating a situation where there is crisis, right? So you have a situation where basic needs are not being met, right? You have a situation where you have social justice challenges, and you have a situation where you have environmental impacts, right, related to floods and droughts happening and creating vulnerability. So I want to come back to ESCAP's role in terms of tracking progress on SDG delivery across the region. And this is just one of the things that we do. And when we look at the data, while we know that on the ground there is a sense that there is increasing crisis, a convergence of crises, the data tells us that poverty delivery on poverty alleviation, in particular for those under the national poverty lines, is improving, right? So what we see is that the official data doesn't tell the whole story of what is happening on the ground. And I think this is a part of, it's an issue for the policymakers, it's an issue for those who are governing, but it's also an issue for those who are advocating for change and who are advocating for some basic issues to be addressed, right? So I would say that we do have somehow a gap between our understanding of the situation from official data and what's happening on the ground. So maybe that's the first point I want to make. Second thing is that we see that we need to go deeper with our analysis as public institutions and as also the allies of those who are supporting those that we've heard from. One of the things that we are doing is looking at this issue of food system risk. And I'm very glad to see that we have chosen the right issue, I would say, to look into through the Environment and Development Division. We have established an index of food, multidimensional food system risk. And what this tells us, in fact, is that the critical population, so those who are going to have special needs with respect to food, the young, the old, the vulnerable, those who have been impacted by natural disaster in the last 3 years, these ones, the numbers of these people in the region are increasing, right? So when you start digging deeper into the data, you start to see what's really happening on the ground. And I think it's with these types of analysis that the advocacy of all institutions and all allies can be strengthened, right? We also see that a big source of risk in food systems, and I'll stay on that a little bit because it's such an important area of focus that we've heard about. A large part of it is related to the risk trends is around the instability of markets, the functioning of markets, and the institutions that deal with markets, right? So, and broader governance issues, right? So when we look at the trends, we see that instability of the markets is really a particularly important issue. So if we're thinking about why is it we have so much food, but not still people are going hungry, we need to look more closely at what's happening with the markets. And this is a trend which is going to worsen, according to our analysis, where many aspects of food system risk are improving and have been improving over time, slowing down because of COVID. The one that is really, really troublesome is this issue of markets. Now, the other aspect of food system risk is the increasing vulnerability of actors in the system, and that includes the producers, right? This trend is region-wide, seen in most countries, and is worrisome because you have also increasing hazards, right? So when we look at the reasons why you have situations where crisis is developing, we can see long-term that this is going to continue in the future. And it means somehow that institutions, both the informal institutions and the informal networks, need to get ready to better deal with crisis situations so that you don't have more and more people falling below lines of burdens of living, which are kind of acceptable. So I think this is a kind of message for those of us who are working with institutions and advocating for policy change. the work that we're doing is also looking at the fact that the resources available and the resource constraints that the governments are facing now, it's real. We face it in the UN system as well, and it is being faced by all around. So the question is, how can we mobilize resources in a more effective way to help those in need? We heard the serious cries for assistance from the community. We've just heard it. How do we mobilize resources in a way? How do we resolve the challenges to strengthening solidarity across countries? I think these are really important points of solidarity and assistance that are needed that networks such as GCAP can support, because we know, as I said, that the trends do not look good, right? So I think this is all that I would want to say at this point. Happy to take any questions or follow-up comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hitomi, I think, for those insights. I just want to check, Pradeep, is Dr. Rosnath Pandey here? Pradeep, are you aware?
Manish, not yet. So
okay.
Abhishek is connecting. If once he is here, we'll give him the floor.
Okay, so maybe we can take, I can see one comment from one of our participants, Ted Tan, who reflected about your point, Hitomi, about the gap in understanding the realities on the ground in terms of the data and the accessibility of such data, right? Do we, as a civil society, have access and able to understand the data that is there? And most UN data systems are reliant on national government's own rights. Sometimes it's very difficult for the non-NGOs to have access to such information, which may be classified as sensitive, and not many Asian countries have a Freedom of Information Act framework for people to use. So that's an overall comment on the access to data as a civil society and how we can do an informed advocacy based on this. So that was, I guess, the reflection of Ted. Maybe we can also take, if there are any quick reflections from any other colleagues, I'm happy to take that as well, one or two, so that I know Tommy can respond to collectively.
Manish, you have to be a little louder.
Okay, I was just saying that I'll just open the floor also for any other quick comments from what you've heard from Hitomi. If you have any quick comments, reflections, or questions that you would like to ask Hitomi,
my hand is
the floor
raised.
is open. So one hand is raised. Sorry, I can't see it because I'm in the. Please, if somebody has.
Yes.
Okay, please go ahead. Because I'm in the
Okay.
screen, I can't seem to see everything. Please
Okay,
go ahead.
My name is Becky Malay. I come from the Philippines. Thank you, Hitomi, for your presentation. I just want to clarify your point, your second point on markets. What is it about instability of markets in your analysis that is, what is it about? I don't know what you want to refer to. What is the instability of markets you're referring to? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Becky. Any one or two additional comments before I hand over to Hitomi? Hitomi, I think maybe you're not. Actually, I'm not seeing any hands. Just one thing also, Hitomi, from my side also, when I heard about your division, which brings together two very interesting concepts, environment and development, it reminded me of an essay I had to write a long time ago when I was a university student. The dichotomies between these two issues and what kind of development model we are pursuing and whether it is actually conducive to the environment that we want to create, right? So how do you, in terms of SCAP, see these two matching? So what is the SCAP's perspective would be interesting to hear. Maybe those 3 points, one around data, accessibility, and one Becky's point about markets that you refer to, and then the aspects around the connections between environment and development aspects. So over to you, Tommy.
Okay, thanks very much. So maybe first of all, the question about the markets. Actually, it's when we look at the data, we see that some countries are better able to manage the impacts of international food inflation than others, right? And that's a combination of institutions, policies, tools which are available, policy tools which are available, and the responsiveness of government, the capacity of government to respond when there is a crisis of inflation. So there are some factors which are a combination of factors, I would say more likely it's a combination of factors, which allow countries to pass through a crisis of international food inflation more successfully than others. So when we look at the data around if we look at the trends for some countries, if we look specifically at vulnerability trends or adaptive capacity trends, we see that some countries passed through these crises without a change in trajectory, right? If you remember 2007-8, there was a big spike in food prices, right? Again in 2010-11, and then most recently, right? For some countries, the impact has been of these food price crises has been long lasting, and vulnerability has really increased since these crises. And for some others, there has not been much of a change. I'm remembering Nepal as a country where these international food price crises transmitted quite success. Now, I don't want to say successfully, but without the kind of impact that was seen in other countries, right? So it's a combination of the way in which I think these the supplies of food, price, and the cost of this food, right, is managed. Right, so that's I think it's a big issue across all of the countries and for Asia and Pacific in particular, overall. So with respect to the accessibility of data, yes, this is really important. The accessibility to data is critical. I would say that civil society also has a role for advocating for collection of data that matters, right? Very often the data that is collected does not reflect what's happening on the ground, and is not actually capturing the key issues that people face. And civil society can identify these key points of data and advocate for the collection of this data. There has been some very good work by the Asia Pacific Research Network in the past, which looked at, which supported civil society organizations in doing their own research around key issues that mattered to them. And I thought that was a really excellent piece of work that captured civil society's views, which are close to what's happening on the ground, and their ability to create knowledge and awareness around issues while also collecting data. So on the issue of environment and development, how we conceptualize it. So what we heard from the people on the ground is that the crisis that we are facing as a people, and I think the point was made that these crises affect everyone, right? They're converging. There's an intersection of the lack of basic needs, environmental challenges, including, of course, climate change as a big overlying driver, and then you have governance crises, right? So in the same way that these crises are converging and they're intersecting, the solutions also have to be integrated, right? So we're no longer able to, for example, go for policy measures which promote increases in GDP. This was mentioned by our opening speaker. We're no longer able to promote those kinds of policies without looking at what are the impacts on the people and on the planet dimension of sustainable development. And I think this is the enduring legacy of the SDGs, which is to bring attention to the fact that the problems are reflective of converging issues and very often interlinked, but also the solutions need to be, right? And that really implies increased capacity, I think, of all actors to work across sectors and to also understand how multidisciplinary studies can bring to light new issues, right? And also advocate for new solutions, right? And to not only think in terms of crisis, but also to think of potentials, right, that can be presented by new approaches such as agroecology, which was also mentioned by a preceding speaker, which is essentially a very holistic way of thinking about changes across the whole value chain that need to happen, So it's not just about the way food is produced, but it's about the way the relationships between farmers and producers and consumers, and the incentives for farmers and the support provided to farmers. Yeah, so I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. I think there are two another questions. I hope we can take it, Pradeep,
Manish,
because
I
it's,
think
yeah.
that only you have very less time for rest of the sessions.
Right.
Dr. Rosnath actually joined. He wanted the floor a little before, so I could not see the
Okay.
message. He has gone back and joined the parliamentary committee, so he cannot come back to join here. Sorry for
Right.
that. I would suggest that we go to the next session because
Sure. Sure. I think, Hitomi, there are a couple of questions in the chat. Maybe you can quickly, respond later in the chat itself, because to save some time. Thank you once again. I think, Hitomi, it was really good to hear some reflections from the UNISCAP's perspective. It's quite unfortunate that, we expected to have this, in this particular session, quite a few members of parliament, because normally the rest of the group, all of us are a converted group anyway, so it would have been good to bring those messages from this side to the policymakers. But I hope we'll have other forums, and I'm sure the documentation that is coming from this, we will try to make sure that it goes. Definitely, Pradeep. Yeah, just because of the time, so maybe I'll hand over back to you, Pradeep, and thus again, thanking you once again, Hitomi, for your insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you, Hitomi. Hitomi, let me also tell you that the whole civil society in Asia has very much been involved in engaging with the Summit of the Future at the Asia level. I informed you, I sent you the document, the whole set of suggestions that we developed with the leadership of Anselmo Becchi. So we'll also have the Global People's Assembly in New York, on those days when Summit of the Future is happening. We'll have the Global People's Assembly, physical assembly, just opposite to the UN building in the United Nations Church Center in 22 to 24. So we do appreciate the leadership provided by Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Summit of the Future, and looking forward to more such engagements on Pact of Future and its implementation. So with that, thank you, Hitomi. I request to Becky Malai. Becky Malai is from PRRM. She's also a former co-chair in the GCAP, to take over the next session. Next session is on the civil society voices. Becky, over to you. Let's try to manage time now. I'm really apprehensive.
Thank you very much, Pradeep. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everybody who are online. I'm very happy to introduce this session that will focus on economic justice issues, institutional reforms, and democracy and human rights. These are very fundamental issues that really looks at systems that affect the situations in our country, especially on the impact on poverty and inequality. We all know that this systemic issues need to be addressed, and institutional reforms and structural reforms need to be done. We have been we are very lucky to have very good speakers for this session. All of them, or most of them, my friends. I think this is the senior edition of of our Asia Assembly. So the first speaker, I'd like to invite former Arjun Karki, who is now with SAPE. He's also a former president of the Rural Reconstruction Nepal, our sister organization, and of course, former ambassador to the United States of Nepal. Arjun, you have the floor.
Thank you, Becky. And thank you very much for your generous introduction. After listening the people's testimony, like from different part of Asia, and also our very eloquent keynote speaker, there hardly anything left for us to add on. However, I would like to really touch upon the very issue of poverty and inequality in South Asia, basically. In fact, South Asia is home of a quarter of world population, and also largest number of old poor lives in this region. Similarly, we have also noticed that some of the highly discussed, controversial billionaires are also from South Asia. And I have recently read a report that says that there are some trillionaire going to be added in the list in the next decade. And some of them are also from South Asia. So how capital is created and how poverty is perpetuated, poverty and inequality in our region, is this is the evidence that the development model, development paradigm promoted by our state is not able to address the very issue of human rights, justice and inequality in our countries and regions. We have also seen that rising fundamentalism, failing economic growth, high rate of inflation, and then rising inequality, and similarly the very issue of gender justice are key issues that can be related to the very issue of poverty and inequality in our region. So what I have noticed in the recent past is we have also history of rich social movement and also struggle not only against the feudalism but also against the imperialism, colonialism. Not only the poverty is increasing, inequality is deepening, but also the space available for social movement, human rights organization, activists are sinking in our part of the world. So if we are not able to organize, galvanize the various sections of our social movement to forge alliance, fight for justice and equality, we cannot really address the very challenges that was put forth by our very representative speaker in earlier session. We have heard from Gen Zs, we have heard a very successful voices from successful student movement from Bangladesh, and also some testimony from Nepal and also Pakistan. So this is the region which has rich history of social movement as well. But these social movements are not really able to come together to challenge the authoritarian regime, rising fundamentalism, and also various dimensions of poverty and injustice that is created by our political leadership of our respective countries and regions. So until and unless we are able to look at the politics of poverty and injustice that creates and perpetuates the inequality and injustice in our region, we won't be able to challenge effectively this very structure. So when we talk about poverty, inequality, we also need to look at the structural causes that are responsible for creating inequality and poverty. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Arjun. It is a major challenge for the social movement, really, to galvanize our efforts together much more in the different countries where we are in. So this is a challenge being posed to us by Arjun. I think it's a challenge for all of us in all generations, because even the Gen Z is demanding that from us. So thank you for that. I would like to send my apologies to May, because I would have to ask Farouk Tariq of the Fight Inequality Alliance to speak first before her. May, I hope you don't mind. Farouk's battery is on low and he is outside and could not make connection. So
Yeah.
let's have Farouk. Thank you, May.
Yeah, sure,
Farouk?
go ahead.
Thank
Farouk,
you,
go
May.
ahead. Yes, please.
Okay. Now, I would speak about the growing inequalities in South Asia and also in Pakistan. Now, all the governments in South Asia at this time are pursuing new liberal agenda, and with the exception of Nepal to some extent, all other right-wing policies, opening up their markets, and they are at a point where they are implementing all the conditionalities of IMF and World Bank. Particularly when we look at in Pakistan, the result is absolute growing inequalities because of these conditionalities. And because of these conditionalities, what they say, tax the poor indirectly. They don't say it directly like this, but a new phase of indirect taxation of almost every consumption of life is been now taxed in Pakistan, but rich are not taxed. So there is a great class polarization in Pakistan, where rich are becoming absolute rich and poor are becoming absolute poor. We have seen recently the huge, massive marriage of an Indian Ambani, whose son was married, and it went on for over years. Billions of dollars were spent on just one marriage, while almost 1/5 of the poor internationally are based in South Asia. So the rich are bloody rich and poor are becoming more poorer. In Pakistan, there are almost 12 different taxes on electricity bill. Electricity in Pakistan is at this time around 23 cent a unit, which is almost one of the highest in the world. And the condition is like this, that your wage is 30,000 and your electricity bill has come to 20 to 25,000 rupees. So that sort of measures has been taken on the name to avoid bankruptcy of Pakistan. They are always threatening us. Yeah, we don't want Sri Lankan like situation. Now, people are already bankrupted, but the ruling class are taking this occasion. Even in this crisis, they are making more money. So a lot of tax concessions are given to the rich, and they have been offered all sort of subsidies. For instance, 2 years before, over $14 billion subsidies were given to the rich of Pakistan. So we see the growing inequalities as a result of the new implementation of new liberal agenda, particularly the present government, which has come into power from February. They are all out to implement the conditionalities of the IMF. And this is where petrol has become expensive, gas has become expensive, and they're going back on usage of fossil fuel to produce electricity. For instance, imported coal, imported gas, and imported oil is being used in most of the so-called independent power producers. And these independent power producers, private companies, 60 of them, they are even paid capacity charges. So they produced electricity or not, they are paid by the government. And that's where the most of the expensive have gone. Other issues really the debt issue. Now Pakistan has over 130 billion debt, and that means that the issue of debt is also increasing inequalities in Pakistan and also in the region. Look at the so-called euphoria of development in Bangladesh, how that was exposed by the student movement. So this so-called development, whereas Bangladeshi government was very proud that we are the fastest growing economy. So this development only benefit the rich, not the poor. Just like the 60s, end of 60s, when there was a so-called growth of capitalism, but capitalism in favor of the rich, not for ordinary people. So is the case in
Well, it looks like we have lost connection with Farouk. Okay. There is no signal that he is coming back, Pradeep, no? Is there?
So seems, yeah.
So sorry that he could not speak completely. But nevertheless, Farouk spoke about public policies, especially macroeconomic policies that impact on poverty and vulnerability of the poor, collection of taxes, IPPs, privatization. These are the issues that we have tackled long ago, since we have focused on debt and IFIs. So I'd like to say that these have been continuously happening because of the very neoliberal agenda that most of our policymakers, most of the governments that we have in many countries in Asia. So
Farouk Sahib is back. If you
I will just sum up in 2 minutes if
yes,
there
please.
is
I'll give you some time.
Okay. Now, what we are demanding in Pakistan is suspend payment of the debt and no corporate farming in Pakistan, because most of the fertile land has been designated to many corporations of Middle East and also the army. And we are also demanding tax the rich, not the poor. And we are also demanding reparation, because most of the affectees of the 2022 climate disaster, in particularly in Sindh, are not been compensated up till today. Although government says that $10 billion have been received, they claim that $30 billion was the total loss, 10 billion they received, but we don't see that 10 billion. Where is that 10 million gone? I think that 10 million, most of that money is gone to repay the debt of Pakistan. So this is nonsense. But the ruling class in Pakistan is doing, that getting money on the name of compensation and repaying the debt. So these are some of the demands we are having, and we are now. I was today at Awas CDS peasant woman workers meeting. I spoke this morning. Classical examples were given how even one family did not cook for 15 days. Such is the poverty level in Pakistan at present time. So we have to launch a movement, and we are building a movement, and there will be 2 major mass meetings of the peasants under our Pakistan Kisan Rabta Committee in cooperation with Asian People's Movement of Debt and Development. So with APMDD, we are going to organize some of the major events in Pakistan where tens of thousands of peasants are going to participate, and we will not sit quiet. We will not just be silenced. We will fight back, and we will accept all the challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Farouk. It gives us inspiration that there's a lot of mobilization against all of these neoliberal policies all over the world, especially in your country, in Pakistan. So thank you for that. Now we go to the reform of the World Bank and the IMF. Our speaker is a very good friend of mine, May Buenaventura of the Asia Pacific Movement for Debt and Development. May and I work for a long time with the Freedom from Debt Coalition, perhaps the oldest coalition in the Philippines that was established to work on issues of debt, IFIs, and the fight against, of course, neoliberal policies. Thank you for your spending your time with us, Farouk. And now we go to May. May?
Thank you, Becky, and thank you to everyone for this opportunity. And I'm very happy to connect with you again, even virtually. So since the colleagues have already talked about the deepening issues of poverty and violations of rights, we can very well connect that also to what Farouk and Arjun said about also the role of the international financial institutions, because they have really, the IMF and the World Bank are really behind a lot of the problems we face today in terms of the policy prescriptions that are, of course, neoliberal, promoting privatization and constraining access of people to basic services, also imposing austerity conditionalities, also funding harmful projects, and many other things. So a lot of our problems today can be traced to what they have done and continue to do so. And to think that they are now celebrating their 80th anniversary, which they will do with a lot of fanfare, I expect, in Washington, D.C., when they hold their annual meetings. So I was reflecting on the title, Reform of the IMF and the World Bank, and I throw back the question to all of us. Is it really possible to reform these institutions? Meaning, can we just, tweak it here and there, put a Band-Aid here and there, and, cover up the holes? In our opinion, the ideological underpinnings of their prescriptions are really difficult to change. They would have to be changed comprehensively, which means an overhaul of these institutions, which means it cannot be simply reformed in the way that the people and the planet need, which is really systemic and transformative changes that we need. So that is why I put in the chat, actually, shared it with all of you, that come October 15 to 27, as we've always done in the debt justice movement, we're marking this with the Global Days of Action against the IMF and the World Bank, and we demand debt, economic, and climate justice. So we hope you'll join us in fighting for really profound reforms, because debt is only one of the issues that's wrong with our international financial architecture. Even though we clamor for changes in their decision making, in stopping conditionalities, and so on, we do this in the context of fighting really for comprehensive international financial reform, architecture reform, because more and more decisions about our economies and societies are being made in those arenas, not anymore in the national arena. And many, even the southern governments, many of those are also collaborating or complicit with IMF and the World Bank, because they have grown so dependent on debts, and are willing to accept the conditionalities to the detriment of their people and the violations of human rights. So I enjoin you all to walk with us in this struggle, really to, continue to erode the legitimacy of these institutions, and finding ways by which we can really systemically and profoundly transform economies and societies. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat. Thank you very much, May, for your intervention. I echo the call to join the Global Days of Action versus the IMF and the World Bank to demand debt, economic, and climate justice from October 15 to 27. So please get in touch with APMDB through May. We go ahead to the next part of our session, which will be on the state of democracy in Asia, this is quite a challenging topic to speak on. So may I call on another good friend, Ichal Supriyadi from the Asia Democracy Network. The floor is yours, Ichal.
Yeah, Becky, thank you so much for the introductions and greetings, warm greeting from everyone. Pradeep, thank you for hosting this. And also a lot of very good senior friends and many colleagues that I cannot mention one by one. I need more than 5 minutes to explaining a brief state of democracy in Asia 2024. Since the state of democracy in Asia is posing a very complex situation and multifaceted landscape that mostly characterizing by both progress and challenge. Although challenge appears more wider than the progress. Well, while we recognize there are a strong demand for democracy from the people, several countries in the regions are experiencing stagnations or deep regressions in the democratic developments. I think this situation is influenced by various factors that impact democratic institutions, civil liberties, and political participation, including disturbance to the democratic institutions. We recognize we still doing unsolved or continuing works to solving conventional challenges that remain from the interference of armed force in politics, where the military always exerts control or influence over political processes to gain access to state resources and private wealth. I think any kind of interference from the military or armed groups truly undermines the democratic principle of civilian controls and accountability, leading to a concentrations of power in the hand of military leaders and hindering the growth of democratic institutions. At the moment of time, we also dealing with the growing or expansion of the remaining problems from the conventional problem that making more serpents from the authoritarianism civilians leaders, from the effect of recycle and evolvement of conventional challenges in the form of political identity, where the rise of ethnic nationalistic forces dominating party systems that increasingly concerning. I think this group often employ fundamentalist and intolerant rhetoric to gain and consolidate power, and endangering the principles of democracy and undermining the right of minority group. It's quite obvious. This form of politics not only threatens democratic inclusivity, but also serve as a fertile ground for corruption under the guise of appealing to national and majority interests, which is unfortunately happened in almost in all countries. I think among the newest pressure that everyone is now start to overcome and really having struggle in the coming years are manipulations or control over the democratic processes and democratic institutions that caused by technology, information, shifting global politics, war in Ukraine and Gaza, and reductions of the global democratic supports. I think this is the first few things that we highlight how to really defending the democratic process and democratic institutions. From the democratic process review, the recent elections of 20 countries, because everybody knows, right, 2024 is the years of elections. I think we cannot hope more, it's become the extensions and successions of another bad guy coming to power, especially in India, Indonesia, Pakistan, Cambodia, Thailand, and Bangladesh, with some notes, because Bangladesh recent uprisings that changed everything. We see likely will still remain the same in 2025 because we still have another 7 elections next years in the row that we're expecting, at least smooth, but not really will changing all the deals or all the democratic landscape. Control over the legislative power is more rampant. create furthermore the proliferations of repressive legislation in many Asian countries, turning the system more toward rule by law rather than rule of law. I think the presence of critical challenges to democratic freedom, draconian law, such as lèse majesté in Thailand or blasphemy law in Pakistan and Bangladesh, and then information technology, NGO law are strictly enforced to suppress opposition and civil society organization. And then the imposition of stringent law pertaining to online conduct further restricts citizen rights and freedom in the digital space. Next is digital repressions and the weaponization of disinformation. Now is more and more has been used to really undermine the opposition's decent voice in the Asia Pacific regions. I think the 2022 election in the Philippines and recently in Indonesia serve as a stock examples where the deceptive narrative and messages contaminated the information environment, preventing citizens from making informed election decisions. I think the same things is happening everywhere. But 2 points before I finishing my 5 minutes. Despite these challenges, there's a hope in the form of active youth engagement and pro-democracy efforts. Young people are increasingly emerging as a powerful force countering the negative outlook for democracy in the regions. I think we have to recognize and giving more space, engagement, connection, bridgings for the youth involvement in the activism. It can be applied everywhere, not only with democracy, but also climate change movements, political leadership showcase will really nurture and grow the influence and commitment to the youth to the democratic defense. I think there's so many youths, individuals running for office now, and then represent a positive shift toward greater representation and inclusivity in politics. I think to address the state of democracy in Asia, we have to deal with those components that I already mentioned, and there is no more, there's no other way for all of us besides to respond, to address, but not as a silo anymore right now, but more likely have to be together, enhancing and strengthening all fronts of resistance, resilience, advocacy, but now in more consolidated and more united means in all front, national, sub-regionals, and even regional and even globals, as well as in one issue and also multi-sectoral issue. By that, I think I should stop and then giving back to you, and I open for any kind of intervention later on from the floor. Thank you so much, Becky.
Thank you so much, HL, for the very succinct presentation that you made. I think the challenge of converging the movements in the political, social, and economic fronts are very important. And this is something that the youth can easily take up as long as there are intergenerational dialogues that can be made and can be opened up, because we need to change the system of rising militarism, and I think it's also very fundamental. We have to have a very feminist point of view here, because the rise of patriarchy has given rise to all of these very disturbing trends affecting our democracies. Thank you, Ichal. And then now we go to the SDGs. This is our very important concerns, because we all know that in Asia Pacific, most of the SDG goals are not on track. So let's see if Jamila Asinova of Argo can give us some hopes if the implementation of the SDGs can be expedited. Jamila, you have the floor.
Thank you, Becky. Hello, everyone. Good to see, and congratulations with this Asia Regional People's Assembly, which actually already we have over 100 participants. It's a very interesting and a good event. So dear distinguished speakers and the participants, thanks for invitation to this important panel. I am representing Argo Civil Society Development Association locating in Kazakhstan, Central Asia. And also I am representing the Asia Development Alliance as the co-coordinator of this event, which is a regional network empowering over 30 national CSO platforms from South, Southeast, Northeast, and the Central Asia. As one of the key strategic priorities for ADA as well as for Argo, the SDG implementation and the SDG 16. So as organizers asked me to make some hopes, can implementation of SDGs be expedited? So I'm planning to share maybe about 3 opportunities which can be used, because, you know, we are not saying that everyone understands that the SDGs are not achieving, but there are some hopes, and maybe we can follow or organize our activities in the next 6 years until 2030 around these 3 priorities. So first, we should have priorities within the framework of SDGs, actually. So in the latest UN update on progress towards the SDGs achievement shows a terrifying picture. Progress on more than 50% of the goals is weak and inefficient, and 30% have stalled or reversed. The reasons for this are obvious: the pandemic, and as Ichal mentioned, different type of issues in the world, like increasing effect of climate change and Russia's war with Ukraine and so on. But here the question about the world can move forward faster and with greater chances to success by prioritizing fewer of 17 SDGs and seeking to simplify them. Because, for example, in our country, 170 indicators are very complicated and not simple to understand by people, by the communities. Of course, it would not make sense to try to resolve the SDGs themselves, given how much has already been invested in them and the difficulties of today's reaching an international agreement on anything compared to 2015, the peak of multilateralism. But this leaves open the possibility of more or less formal and the public understanding that some goals will be prioritized over others. Thus, prioritization of SDGs is strategic necessity. So the second, I would say the SDGs should remain people-oriented and the people voices needed approach. So as the goal of today's assemblies is also related with People's Assembly is very important. And in my presentation, in my speech talk, I would say that increase this opportunity also. Today's world is very different from what it was in 2015 when the SDGs were adopted. People should stay at the center of SDGs, especially considering that Asian countries are among the most unequal and violent regions in the world. Artificial intelligence is a revolutionary technology, the scope and the risk of which we are just beginning to understand. Currently, models are emerging of the world where governments, together with technology companies, academia, and the civil society, can work to create mechanisms for managing the risks associated with artificial intelligence, as well as monitoring and mitigating the harmful effects of using the technology and distributing the benefit association with it. So therefore, it's very important, extremely important to invest in education and the development of youth children. And the third issue which I would like to mention is reallocation of resources for the SDGs through new budgetary approaches, financial strategies, and innovative partnerships. So SDGs can only be achieved through strong partner relations. That is why it's important to include representatives of civil society, private sector, and the academia when the governments are taking responsibility to this SDG implementation on the high level forums and so on. So to promote the SDGs, it's necessary to look for new partners, and media can play a key role here also. It's important to share experience in order to accelerate progress towards achieving the SDGs and not leave anyone behind. It's important to study and describe specific cases at the local level. For example, in Kazakhstan, the SDGs are currently being implemented in several pilot territories, particularly in two of them, which are located more than 400 kilometers away in the remote area from big cities. Through the community engagement and the involvement of stakeholders, including entrepreneurs, local educational and the social institutions, as well as the ministries on national level and the National Secretariat for SDGs, through identifying social economic problems, local problems, and the local communities together as a group prioritize the SDGs and introduce specific activities into the local development plans, where there is possibility of financing with participation from the state budget and also from civil society funds and the local entrepreneurs, into account the people voice on the local level. So thank you for giving chance to say, but 5 minutes is not a lot time. And I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, still we have 6 years, you know, and maybe be more optimistic. We need something like change a paradigm of the shift the paradigm of how SDG should be implemented. And thanks a lot for attention, and good luck with the rest of the sessions. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you very much, Jamila. It was very good to see you, even just virtually. I am very happy to have you giving us hopes that things can change with the new paradigms that you are proposing. So let's go ahead with that and work on it. Thank you. The last speaker for this session will be Arjun Bataray from the National NGO Federation of Nepal, also a member and co-chair of GCAP Global. Arjun, you have the floor.
Thank you, Becky, and good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, and thank you for having these sessions, and of course hearing from Dr. Sharma and the Jamila. So I don't need to explain about how important the economic justice campaign, because my topic is like a little bit sharing on the economic justice campaign. So as all of the speakers said, that like globally there increase in inequality and injustice in the climate issues, burning debt issues, burning, and many issues. So the peoples they highlighted because of not because of the peoples, is that because of the the policy makers, because of the rich countries, because of the who are preparing these whole policies for the in the name of the people. So as we met in the civil society leaders in the May in Nairobi after this civil society summit of the futures. So over 50 civil society leaders and the civil society, global civil society campaigners, and the larger civil society platform we met in the Nairobi. And actually we discussed a lot upon this burning issue of inequality across the globe, and mostly we discuss on the financial inequality. So we decided to organize the global inequality, the global financial justice campaign in 2025. And actually it's not only the GCAP together with the ActionAid, Oxfam, and many other, Amnesty International, and many more global civil society, they want to come together and to engage in this this global economic justice campaign. So and it's very important for in Asia, because we are more in Asia, more than 10 poorest countries of the world we are in Asia. Also the recent data said that in more than 10% people's like they are living in Asia, they are more vulnerable situation in terms of in poverty and many. And other there's also the problem is the climate change issue is burning in the Asia. So I think it's a very important. It's a 2025. There's many global discussion and global movement is going on. So as we civil society already mobilizing in the name of the Davos mobilizations in January. But of course there's a whole year we need to engage in against this the global financial architecture which is making all us in in different conditions. So as a GCAP and on behalf of global organizing team, I'd like to invite all Asian civil society leaders, Asian civil society organizations to join this global campaigns. And it's still not quite, we are not very initial phase. So of course we will discuss and dialogue more on that, how we can shaping this global justice campaigns. So in futures it will come of course in the when we started and where we in these campaigns, and of course it will more mobilization across the country, and we want to invite young people's media, journalists, academia, civil society activists, and the private sectors, and all need to join for this in economic justice campaign. So on behalf of GCAP and all organizers, so this is the time we need to raise the voice, we need to stand, and we need to speak. We need the justice now, and we need economic justice now. So I need to stop here. So that's already the prominent speakers highlighted the importance of this, how the civil society need to come together and need to against this a new liberal economy and this the global financial architecture. So this is my final word. Let's stand up together and let's organize campaign for the 2025 and against this new liberal economy, this global financial architecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Arjun. I hope we are able to mobilize for next year and really put forward this fight against inequality and for justice. No? So I turn over to our Pradeep for the last session. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky, for nice moderation. Colleagues, very sorry that we have already run over 10-15 minutes. I seek 10 or 15 minutes more for the final session. That's important because every time in the Asia Assembly, we have been coming up with a declaration capturing the set of suggestions in different themes. Please bear with us and be with us for the last 10 to 15 minutes, not more. I hand it over to Anselmo Lee, APST coordinator.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening again. My name is Anselmo from Asia Civil Society Partnership for Sustainable Development. I'm in France near Geneva, attending some meetings here in Europe. After listening to all the presentation and discussion, and now it's time to put together all our ideas into People Declaration. As you know, this declaration has been prepared by drafting committee members and take into account all the inputs, previous discussions. I hope this declaration will reflect all discussion we had just now. Pradeep, can you please show the declaration in the screen?
Yeah, so I think Mariam is going to do it.
Yeah. Mariam?
Yes, hi, and Solo Pradeep. Yes, I'm just sharing it.
Yes. Could you please highlight some of the key the point in the declaration? There are 4 themes, as we know, and there are some key demands. There are a lot, of course, because there are so many issues. Let's present. Yeah, please.
Yeah. Can everybody see?
No, we cannot see it yet.
Yes, it's coming up soon. It's coming up soon. Yeah.
No, it should come. Yeah. Or maybe you can try, or else I can do that.
Yeah, I guess that would be really nice. Please. We are so sorry today. The internet is really slow here in Pakistan.
No, you go ahead. Now we can see it. Yeah, you have to come from the beginning.
So yeah, before I start, I would just like to give a brief background that the current declaration is created by building on the foundations of last year's declaration. And the previous declaration, served as a reference. And additionally, the drafting process also incorporated the insights and discussions that took place, across the civil society organizations in Asia during the current year, where civil society groups work together on the common goals, which are reflected in this updated declaration. So mainly there are 4 areas where this declaration is prepared on. The first one is ending poverty and inequalities and implementing universal social protection floors. Second, the right to health and universal health coverage. Third, promoting democracy, civic space, and human rights. Last but not the least, climate justice and disaster risk reduction. So for today's session, we will just going to highlight some of the key demands. That includes adopt a universal social protection floors majorly through public funding, recognize the rights of farmers to land and food and institutional credit, assert community rights over land and natural resources, stop land grabbing, illegal and acquisitions, and ensure community consent for resource diversions to corporations. Involve local communities in ecological planning for the sustainable use of land, water, forest, and other natural resources. Promote meaningful engagement of women in positions of decision-making and governance roles to reduce inequalities, shed a light on unseen issues, and enhance peace and dignity. Ensure minimum living wage and job security across Asia. We demand radical reforms of the international financial institutions like the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, which were created before 80 years and have served the interest of rich countries. So for the second theme, which is right to health and universal health coverage, we demand to adopt publicly funded universal health coverage with a special focus on leaving no one behind, advocate for governments to uphold and advance the people's right to health and healthcare as a fundamental entitlement, ensure an equitable pandemic accord enabling technology transfer and manufacturing capacity to development in each region, seek changes in global trade rules to combat technology monopolization in the global north, strengthen community-based system by increasing public investment in primary healthcare through improving professional capabilities, physical infrastructure, medical equipment, and facilities. Invest in health information systems to enhance delivery and data management. So on third theme, which is democracy, civic space, and human rights, we demand and we disapprove of the rise of security state in the region, call on the states to respect and promote fundamental freedoms, especially freedom of association and expression, ensure that the internet remains free, open, and secure for all citizens, highlight the adverse impact of rising religious fundamentalism and majoritarianism on the minority communities, address electoral authoritarianization and demand greater accountability from governments in the region, demand the inclusion of youth in decision-making processes, which states should protect civic space and human rights defenders who are playing a crucial role in protecting the interest of marginalized communities and democratic rights. Take adequate measures to protect the human rights of women and persons with disabilities, indigenous communities, communities discriminated by work and descent, children, LGBTQI+ communities, religious minorities, and other such marginalized groups, and eliminate multiple intersecting forms of discrimination. On last but not the least, climate justice and disaster risk reduction, with demand for the common but differentiated responsibilities with wealthy industrialized countries, increasing climate finance contribution, including grants for climate-induced loss and damage. Ask the global north countries for corporations to take the lead in the deep, rapid, and sustained GHG emissions reductions in line with their historical obligations and without resorting to offsets and other false solutions in order to keep the global temperature from rising 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. The focus on adaptation should also be equal. The region needs to have better community-based inclusive disaster risk reduction framework to avoid losses from weather events. adopt gender and vulnerability sensitive approach in climate action by designing and implementing policy and programs that take into account all diversities within genders and sexual orientations and indigenous peoples who serve as custodians of natural resources. Strengthen the education system to embed climate change education framed within social and ecological justice and empower communities to assert their rights. Lastly, consumption patterns needs to be regulated not only in the rich countries but also among affluent individuals in developing nations. So we cannot go through the whole document, but definitely will share among all the participants to reflect and share your feedback. Thank you. Over to you, Anselmo.
Okay, thank you very much, Mariam Khan. So this is the draft declarations. Although we are very late behind the schedule, I think it's important to get some feedback and comment from participants. So now feel free to take a floor. Please raise up your hand if you have any comment. This is a result of collaborative work among the drafting committee members. But if you think any important issue missing, or if you are not strong enough or radical enough, feel free to share your feedback. So there is still room for improvement. Pradeep, can I ask for clarification? Is it possible to get written comment after this assembly? Still possible, right?
Yeah, Anselmo, in terms of process, because we didn't share it before, and just in 10 minutes sharing will not give a full picture.
Exactly, yeah, exactly, yeah.
For this, I will share the draft to all participants and invitations to the email groups that invitation was sent for the Asia Regional Assembly. So keep it open for 2 days this week, but we'll support the endorsement and in both. So that by early next week, we'll wind it up and finalize. Yeah.
Okay, very good. So we will circulate this draft declaration by email, and also those register for this webinar. So you will get the text soon. So feel free to give your input, maybe 3 days before this Sunday, so that we can finalize, because we need to send it to UN, before the Summit of the Future, right? So once again, thank you very much for your comment and interest. So I hope to receive your comment very soon. Okay, now hand over to Pradeep.
Okay, thanks. Anselmo, thank you very much. As I told, I shared the declaration link. You can still comment on that. In the meantime, let me invite, we will close this, but before that, I invite Chali Thahmok, the PVA Asia coordinator, to do the Thanksgiving and formal closing. Thank you.
Yeah, so to the last session, last but not least, I would like to thank Dr. Devender Sharma for delivering the keynote address. I thank Ms. Hitomi Rankin to have participated in the event to sharing their valuable inputs. I thank the members for the communities to share their experiences and issues. I thank the members of civil society to share their perspectives on various subjects of the current concern. I also thank the moderators and our organizer. I thank the decoration committee members, Anselmo, Mariam, Praman, and also myself. I also thank Prakati for managing the social media. Thanks also Pradeep for coordinating these events. And yeah, so we will close the assembly here, and thank you all. Pradeep, you would like also
one final announcement. Mok, we will have the Global People's Assembly in New York from 22 to 24. It's a physical event. I have not sent the invitation. I'll send it today. Any of you are there, please register and join us. We'll take some of these messages from Asia Assembly to the Global Assembly. And we'll also try to highlight key messages from our social media and send you for retweeting and highlighting further. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you. Bye-bye. We close the event here. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Anselmo.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Abhishek, Bina, Hongdam, Bebe.
Thank you, Anselmo.
Okay, very good. See you soon. See you soon.
See you soon. Thank you, Pradeep.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you, Pradeep, for bringing us together.
Yeah, here is very cold. Geneva is very cold. I want to go back to Asia.
Come. You are welcome to Kathmandu.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Okay, see you soon. Okay, bye.
Bye.